The Travels of Marco Polo, Chapter 39, of the Town of Lop, the Vast Desert, and the Strange Noises Heard on it. The town of Lop is situated towards the northeast near the commencement of the Great Desert, which is called the Desert of Lop. It belongs to the dominions of the Great Khan, and its inhabitants are of the Mahometan religion. Travelers who intend to cross the desert usually halt for a considerable time at this place in order to rest from their fatigue as well as to make the necessary preparations for their further journey. For this purpose, they load a number of stout asses and camels with provisions and with their merchandise. Should the former be consumed before they've completed their passage, they kill and eat both kinds of animals. But camels are commonly here employed in preference to asses, because they carry heavy burdens and require less food. Provisions for a month should be laid in, that time being required for crossing the desert even in the narrowest part. To travel it in the direction of its length would prove a vain attempt, as little less than a year would be needed, and to carry stores for such a period would be impracticable. During these 30 days, the journey is invariably over either sandy plains or barren mountains, but at the end of each day's march you stop at a place where water is procurable. Not indeed in such quantity for large numbers, but enough to supply 100 persons together with their beasts of burden. At 3 or 4 of these halting places the water is salt and bitter, but at the others, amounting to about 20, it is sweet and good. In this tract neither beasts nor birds are met with, because there is no kind of food for them. It is asserted as an established fact that this desert is the abode of many evil spirits which lure travelers into their destruction with the most extraordinary illusions. If during the daytime any persons remain behind on the road, either when overtaken by sleep or delayed by natural functions, until the caravan has passed a hill and is no longer in sight, they are startled to hear themselves called by their names, and in a tone of voice to which they are accustomed. Supposing the call to come from their companions, they are led away by it from the road, and not knowing in what direction to advance, they are left to perish. In the night-time they are persuaded they hear the march of a large cavalcade of people, on one side or the other of the road, and concluding the noise to be that of their party, they direct their steps to the quarter whence it seems to come. But at break of day they find they have been misled and drawn into danger. Sometimes during the day these spirits assume the appearance of their traveling companions, address them by name, and try to lead them out of the proper road. It is said also that some persons, while crossing the desert, have seen what appeared to be a body of armed men advancing towards them, and fearful of being attacked and plundered, have taken to flight. Having thus abandoned the right path, and not knowing how to regain it, they perish miserably of hunger. Marvelous indeed, and almost beyond belief, are the stories related to these spirits of the desert, which are said at times to fill the air with the sounds of all kinds of musical instruments, and also of drums and the clash of arms, obliging the travelers to close their line of march and to proceed in more compact order. They also find it necessary to take the precaution, before they stop for the night, to agree on a sign pointing out the course they are to take, and to attach a bell to each of the beasts of burden, so that they may be more easily kept from straggling. Such are the excessive troubles and dangers that are inevitably met in crossing this desert. Chapter 40 of the province of Tangut, the city of Seshion, and the ceremony of burning the dead. When the journey of 30 days across the desert has been completed, you arrive at a city called Sechau, which belongs to the Great Khan. The province is named Tangut. The people are worshippers of idols. There are Turkomans among them, and a few Neostrian Christians, and Mahometans. Those who are idolaters have a language distinct from the others. This city lies towards the east-northeast. They are not a commercial, but an agricultural people, having much wheat. There are in this country a number of monasteries and abbeys, which are filled with idols of various kinds. To these, which they regard with the profoundest reverence, they offer sacrifices, and on the birth of a son they recommend him to the protection of one of their idols. In honor of this deity, the father rears a sheep in his house until the end of the year, and then, on the idol's holiday, they conduct their son together with the sheep into its presence, and there sacrifice the animal. They boil the flesh and lay it before the idol, and stand in front of it until they have finished a long prayer in which they beg the idol to preserve the health of their child, and they believe that during this interval it has sucked in all the savory juices of the meat. The remaining substance they then carry home, and assembling all their relations and friends, eat it with much devout festivity. Finally, they collect the bones and preserve them in handsome urns. The priests of the idol have for their portion the head, the feet, the intestines, and the skin, together with part of the flesh. With respect to the dead, too, these idolaters have special ceremonies. Upon the death of a person of rank whose body they plan to burn, the relations call together the astrologers and tell them the year, day, and hour, whereupon these proceed to examine the horoscope, and having ascertained the constellation or sign and the planet presiding therein, declare the day on which the funeral ceremony shall take place. If it should happen that the same planet is not then in the ascendant, they order the body to be kept a week or more, and sometimes for even 6 months, before they allow the ceremony to be performed. In the hope of a favorable aspect, and dreading unfavorable influence, the relations do not dare to burn the corpse until the astrologers have prescribed the proper time. It being therefore often necessary that the body remain long in the house, they guard against the consequences of putrefaction by fitting a coffin made of boards of palm in thickness, well fitted together and painted, in which they deposit the corpse, and along with it sweet-scented gums, camphor, and other drugs. The joints or seams they smear with a mixture of pitch and lime, and the whole is then covered with silk. During this period, the table is spread every day with bread, wine, and other provisions, which remain long enough for the dead one to eat a meal, as well as for the spirit of the deceased, which they suppose is present, to satisfy itself with the aroma of the victuals. Sometimes the astrologers tell the relations that the body must not be taken from the house through the main door because they've discovered from the aspect of the heavens or otherwise that this would be unlucky, and it must therefore be taken out from a different side of the house. In some instances, indeed, they oblige them to break through the wall and convey the corpse through that opening, persuading them that if they refuse to do so, the spirit of the dead will be incensed against the family and do them some injury. Accordingly, when any misfortune befalls a house, or any person belonging to it meets with an accident, or a loss, or an untimely death, the astrologers attribute the event to a funeral not having taken place during the ascendancy of the planet under which the dead relative was born, but on the contrary, under the evil influence, or to its not having been conducted through the proper door. As the ceremony of burning the body must be performed outside the city, they erect at intervals along the road on which the procession is to pass small wooden buildings with a portico, which they cover with silk, and under each of these the body is set down. They place before it meats and liquors, and this is repeated until they reach the appointed spot, believing as they do that the spirit is thereby refreshed and acquires energy to attend the funeral pyre. Another ceremony also is performed on these occasions. They provide pieces of paper made of the bark of a certain tree, upon which are painted the figures of men, women, horses, camels, pieces of money, and dresses, and these they burn along with the corpse in the conviction that in the next world the deceased will enjoy the services of the servants, cattle, and all the articles depicted on the paper. Throughout these proceedings, all the musical instruments belonging to the place are sounded with an incessant din. Having told of this city, others lying towards the northwest, near the head of the desert, shall now be mentioned.